I need a husband tomorrow. Billionaire said. Single dad replied. That mean we'll live together? There's a moment. Most people who've lived long enough will recognize it. When life puts you in a room with a stranger, and something shifts. Not in a loud way. Not in the way the movies would have you believe. It shifts quietly. Like a window opening in a house you thought was sealed shut. That's how it started for Wesley Caldwell. Wesley was 32 years old. Young enough to still believe things could turn around. Old enough to know they didn't always. He had dark brown hair, always neatly kept, and the kind of steady face that people instinctively trusted. Not handsome in a showy way, just solid. The kind of man you'd want around in a crisis because he never seemed rattled, even when he was. He worked as a maintenance supervisor at the Haverford Grand Hotel in downtown Columbus, Ohio. He'd started there at 26, fresh off a rough patch, a marriage that ended too soon, a baby boy he was now raising entirely on his own. 6 years later, he knew every boiler, every circuit panel, every temperamental elevator in that building the way most men know the sound of their own front door. It was a Tuesday evening in late October when the hotel hosted one of its charity fundraiser galas. 300 guests in black tie, a live pianist, champagne towers, the whole thing. Wesley was supposed to check the main ballroom HVAC before the guests arrived. Instead, he found himself pausing in a side corridor near the kitchen, holding a crescent wrench, watching through a half-open door as the wealthy and the well-connected clinked glasses beneath a chandelier that probably cost more than his truck. He didn't envy them. That was the honest truth. He just wondered, sometimes, what it felt like to move through a room like you owned the floor beneath your feet. He was still wondering that when she sat down. She didn't sit so much as she collapsed, carefully, the way a person does when they're determined not to let anyone see how tired they really are. She couldn't have been more than 30, maybe 32 at most. Long blonde hair, the kind that probably looked effortless but wasn't. Her dress was gold, strapless, and absolutely right for the room she'd just walked out of. Her shoes were off. She was sitting on a supply crate in the service corridor, barefoot on a concrete floor, with the posture of someone who had been carrying something very heavy for a very long time. She looked up when she noticed him standing there. Blue-green eyes, sharp and intelligent, with the faint trace of someone who had been crying not too long ago, though she'd done a careful job of fixing the mascara. She gave him a tight, polite smile. "I'm not lost," she said. "I just needed somewhere quiet." Wesley nodded slowly. "You found it. This is about the quietest corner in the building." She glanced at his uniform, then at the wrench in his hand. "Were you going to fix something?" He said. "Might take a break first." He set the wrench on the shelf beside him and leaned against the wall, hands in his pockets. Neither of them said anything for a moment. From behind the ballroom door, a piano played something slow and old. It reminded Wesley of his grandmother's house, Sunday afternoons. Something on the radio, the smell of coffee. "I'm Wesley," he said finally. "Vivian," she said. She said it like she was a little tired of her own name. Vivian Hargrove. He recognized it. Hargrove Industries. Her father, Raymond Hargrove, had built half the commercial real estate on Columbus's east side. Wesley had actually worked a maintenance job in one of those buildings years back, before he landed steady work at the hotel. He didn't mention it. "You doing all right, ma'am?" he asked. It wasn't prying. It was the kind of question someone asks when they already know the answer is no, but they want the other person to know that somebody noticed. She laughed. Not a happy laugh. More like air releasing from something that had been under a lot of pressure. "No," she said plainly. "Not particularly." She looked down at her hands for a moment. "My father passed away 6 weeks ago. He left the company to me." and there is a board meeting this Thursday morning where several men who are old enough to be my grandfather are going to try to vote me out of my own inheritance." She paused. "And tonight, about an hour ago, my attorney told me there is a clause in my father's original company charter, written in 1987, a clause that says I have to be married to hold majority control." She said all of it very evenly, the way people do when they've turned something over in their heads. So many times it stopped surprising them. "So, that's where things stand." Wesley was quiet for a moment. "That's a lot," he said. "That's a lot," she agreed. The piano behind the door shifted into something a little livelier. Neither of them moved. "I need a husband by tomorrow," Vivian said. It came out flat and strange, the way words do when you've only ever said them once before. "My attorney found a loophole. A civil ceremony, legal, on record. It doesn't have to be permanent. It's an arrangement." She stopped, glanced sideways at him. "I don't know why I'm telling you this." Wesley picked up the wrench again, turned it over in his hands the way he always did when he was thinking through something. "That mean we'd have to live together?" he asked. She stared at him. Then, for the first time all evening, Vivian Hargrove laughed. A real one, genuine and completely surprised out of her. What? I'm asking practically," he said, with just the edge of a smile. "I've got a 4-year-old at home. He's got a whole routine. Bath at 7:30. Same 2 books every night. He doesn't do well with change." She looked at him for a long moment. "You're not actually." "I'm not," he agreed easily. "Though I reckon it'd make one heck of a story someday." She laughed again, softer this time, a little grateful. "Yeah," she said. "It really would." They stayed in that corridor for a long time after that. Vivian told him about her father, a proud, stubborn man who'd spent 40 years building something from nothing and never quite learned how to say he was sorry, but who always remembered your birthday, always knew how you took your coffee, always called her kiddo right up until the end. Wesley told her about his son, Cooper, 4 years old, obsessed with fire trucks, terrified of dogs, and currently in the care of Wesley's neighbor Mrs. Patterson, who charged $12 an hour and was absolutely worth every penny. "His mother?" Vivian asked quietly. "She left when he was 8 months old," Wesley said. "No bitterness in it. Just fact, worn smooth by time. We manage fine. Better than fine, most days. You're raising him alone." It wasn't a question. "That's what you do," he said simply. Vivian turned the small black clutch over in her hands. "My father would have liked you," she said after a moment. "Yeah. He respected people who didn't make themselves sound like more than they were. Said it was the rarest thing." She paused. "He wasn't always that way himself, but he admired it in other people." Wesley looked at her. This young woman in a gold dress sitting, barefoot on a supply crate, holding an empire together with both hands, and thought that her father had probably admired it in her too, whether he'd ever said so or not. It was nearly midnight when Wesley walked her back toward the main hall. The gala was winding down, guests collecting coats, conversations stretching out in that slow, reluctant way of people who know the real world is waiting. Just past the revolving door, at the entrance to the ballroom, Vivian turned to face him. "I wasn't actually asking you," she said. "Earlier, when I said I needed a husband, I want to be clear about that. I wasn't. I didn't mean to put something strange on you." "I know that," Wesley said. "I just needed to say it out loud to someone who wasn't going to try and fix it." She looked at him steadily. "You didn't try to fix it. Some things don't need fixing right away," he said. "Sometimes a person just needs someone to stand in the room with them while they figure out what they actually think." She was quiet. Then she reached into her clutch and pulled out a small white card. Just her name and a number. "If your son ever needs anything, someone to talk to about dealing with people who underestimate you, navigating rooms that weren't built for you, She smiled a little wry. I have some experience with that. Wesley took the card. I'll keep that in mind. He watched her walk back into the ballroom, shoulders back, chin level, moving like someone who had just remembered exactly what she was made of. He thought about what it costs a person to walk back into a room that has been working against them. He thought about the mornings he'd dropped Cooper off at daycare with $11 in his account and a smile on his face, because that was what the boy needed to see. He thought, there are all kinds of courage in this world. Most of it never makes the news. Thursday morning, Wesley was in the hotel basement rewiring a breaker panel when his coworker, Danny, knocked on the door frame and held up his phone. Hey, Wes, you see the news? The headline read, Hargrove Industries Board Meeting Resolves. Vivian Hargrove retains majority control. Wesley read it twice. He didn't know all the details of how she'd done it. He didn't need to. He just knew that she had walked back into that room. He set his screwdriver down and smiled, the quiet, private kind of smile that nobody else needs to see. That evening, after he picked Cooper up from Mrs. Patterson's and got the boy fed and bathed, and into bed with his 2 books, Wesley's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Unknown number, but it matched the card still in his shirt pocket. 1. Thank you for the corridor. V. He stood reading it for a long moment. Through the hallway, he could hear Cooper already asleep. That soft, even breathing that still, made Wesley's chest feel full in a way he couldn't quite put into words. He typed back 2 words. I know. Then he set the phone down, poured himself half a cup of coffee he probably shouldn't have that late, and stood by the window looking out at the quiet street below. He thought about corridors, about supply crates and bare feet on cold concrete, about how the most important conversations in a person's life almost never happen where you'd expect them to, about how sometimes all you can offer another person is a little stillness in the middle of their storm, and how sometimes that is exactly enough. He thought about his boy asleep down the hall, about how much of life is just showing up, just being the steady thing when everything else is tilting. No grand gestures, no speeches, just presence, just reliability, the quiet kind of strength that doesn't get named or celebrated very often. And Wesley Caldwell, 32 years old, single father, hotel maintenance man, honest to his core, thought that maybe he was doing all right, maybe more than all right. Well, folks, that's our story for today. If it touched something in you, if it reminded you of a time when a stranger's steadiness made a difference in your life, or a moment when you were the quiet person in someone else's corridor, please take a second and give this video a like. It truly helps more people find these stories. Share it with someone who could use a reminder that ordinary people do extraordinary things every single day, not with money or power, but with patience, honesty, and a willingness to just be there. And if you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love to have you with us. New stories come out every week. Stories about real human moments. The kind that don't make headlines, but change lives all the same. Leave us a comment below. Has a stranger ever said or done something small that stayed with you for years? We read every single one. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.